counting down?
I can't see anything counting down.
Well, I can, so we're live.
Fantastic.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to Project Management Cafe and our normal Facebook Live slot. And today it's not just me. Today I'm broadcasting to you from a different room in my house where hopefully the light's a bit better than my dark and dismal office downstairs. And on this side, on this side of me, you'll be able to see Simon Harris, who is a project management trainer with years and years of experience and a consultant as well, who runs logicalmodel.net, which is a training firm. And I don't know, do you want to say a bit about yourself, Simon?
And I will add to that is consulting.
Yes.
So, lots of consulting and training to fill in between times.
Perfect. So what we're talking about today is the theme of this week. So Simon's been our resident expert in the Facebook group this week, and we've been talking all things to do with accidental project managers. So what happens when somebody says to you, can you just run this project? And perhaps you started your own career like that, or perhaps you have chosen to go into project management like me. So that's been the theme of the week, and I know that Simon, you helped me with the input into coming up with that theme. So hopefully we can go through some of the questions today and hear your thoughts on it. And I thought I ought to start with my handy list of things to ask you. Why do you think people become accidental project managers?
I think the main two reasons are either they're standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, or actually they're trying to get themselves into project management and they see an opportunity to grasp it. So two different motivations, I suggest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I suppose I always think of it as someone who's had project management thrust upon them by someone else. But you're right, you could actually choose to step up and say, now's the time. I'm going to advance my career and take on project management yourself.
Yeah, slightly broader than project management, but I've always found the best way to get promoted is to already be doing the job.
Yes, that helps.
Job, it makes it so much easier for the person who's slightly sticking their neck out to give you a different title. Mm-hmm. They can see that you've got the competence. So grabbing the opportunity when it's available is something that I've done that consistently even in contract roles. So you can get promoted as a contractor simply by taking the opportunities around you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so looking out for an opportunity and going for it might get you into a position where you're managing a project. And I suppose that could even be for someone who is currently a project manager, but who wants to take the next step to program management or sideways onto a bigger project or into portfolio role or program office or something like that. So yeah, look out for the opportunities.
Yeah.
You're putting a face.
Well, I think you can step project to program, and I think you can step program into, say, program office. I wonder about portfolio a bit, just because of where it's positioned in the organisation and the like. But I think you can step into a portfolio role, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily from a project on prep. Well, I certainly don't think it'd be from
not from a project role. No, that's a fair comment. So when you are picking up a new project, whether it's something that you've chosen to do because you think it's a good thing for your career, or whether someone's just said, here you go, now it's your turn, you manage all of this. What are the things that you can do to get started quickly?
I'd reiterate what I put in the post on the page earlier. The key thing is to have some perspective on where you're going. And where you're going, if you're in a project role, is where whoever's paying the bills wants you to go. Mm-hmm. So the stuff to do to get started is to find out where the person who's paying the bill wants to end up. Mm-hmm. And you get one of several responses from that, one of which is, this is where I want to end up, which is always nice and clear. Another is, this is where I want to end up, but when you look around, you can see that there's plenty of other people with an opinion, in which case you need to go out and talk to them, because otherwise you'll get tripped up somewhere where you didn't expect to. Or mm-hmm. when you go and say, where do we want to end up? They say, actually, I don't know. I thought that's what you were going to tell me.
Go away, do the planning and tell me what the answer is.
Yeah. So what are the inputs? Oh, I don't know. You work that out too. Okay, where do I start? I don't know. You work that out too.
That's what we pay you for.
Yeah. question to then ask is, well, so either what's keeping you awake at night? So what's biting at your heels that somehow is a problem you want me to solve? Or equally, what opportunity have you seen that when we grasp it, it's going to make us all much better off?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the two questions to rely on at the end of the day. What was it that caused you some concern, or where is it that you think there's a benefit? And if they can't answer either of those, I suggest you just take 2 days holiday, merge it into the weekend, and see whether or not it's still flavour of the week on the following Monday.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Tariq's asked a good question, actually. What do you think about the resistance that's made by most of the C-suite against project management? And he's made the point that PMOs are vanishing. So is that a trend that you've noticed as well?
Wow, I think there's a lot in that. First of all, let's take the PMOs are vanishing. I don't think that's the case at all.
All right.
I think poorly constituted PMOs have always had a real struggle, and having run several reasonably large ones as well as small ones, it's exactly the same question, I think, is at the root of that as the other half of the question here, which is the C-suite raising objections against project management and its value.
I'm just going to move that comment because it's right over your face.
Well, okay. Well, I couldn't see that. I mean, I'm in glorious Technicolor here. So
sorry, carry on.
It's a question of value. So I think as a person being asked to consider a project, I have an absolutely clear, crystal clear view of the fact this is going to cost us resource, people, and people are busy. So I can see there's an absolute certainty of cost, and then I get a whole bunch of promises and other exhortations that suggest value. And typically that value is not clearly delineated. It's not well linked to how the organisation delivers value for money for its customer base or its constituency, so profit for its shareholders or whatever. I think if you want to overcome the C-suite concerns, then you really need to be asking for any project or PMO, how does this link to the income and expenditure or profit and loss? And if you can't answer that question because you don't have the skill set, you need to go and knock on the finance folks' door and say, look, this is the initiative to change that's being talked about, and this is where it's being sponsored from, and this is how the benefits are being described. Now, how do we turn that into an expression of value in recognisable terms for the people at the top table and the people who own the organisation, either the voters or the shareholders? If you can't do that, then you should expect the resistance, and because you're not got somebody addressing the right questions, and the somebody addressing that question should typically be the sponsor. If you're an accidental project manager, if you're a career project manager, you should have that as something that was at the beginning of your activities anyway.
I think when I see resistance from the C-suite in organisations, it's come about because they don't really understand the value that a project manager in particular can bring. They might be able to see that there's value in doing the project because we launch a new product and we make loads more money and all the rest of it, but actually the tangible value of having somebody in control of that beyond a department head or director who might be sponsoring, championing the change. So I think there's an education piece as well around the fact that it is someone's full-time job, especially on bigger pieces of work, to do the organising, the coordination, the management of resources, the flagging of the risks, the reporting. Otherwise, it all just falls apart. Or it can't just be absorbed into somebody's day job.
Well, yeah, I had that debate with somebody recently. They said within their organisation that they were trying to promote the idea that if it was a project, it needed to be dealt with by a project manager. Mm-hmm. And my analogy for that was to say, well, if you want to go and get the groceries or pick the kids up from school, you don't have a chauffeur. You just hop in the car and drive down there. And project management and driving are equal skills. Now, I wouldn't try and drive an 18-wheel truck or a Formula One car, but I do expect to be able to hop down to the shops. And I think the same thing applies with projects. I think if you give somebody a change initiative within their day job that's sufficiently linked, doesn't cross lots of boundaries, doesn't require
That's it, though, isn't it?
additional, then there should be the sort of accidental project management bit as being quite legit. When it's
Yes.
boundaries, that's different.
Tariq's left another comment there. Let me bring that up. It says they see the PMO as the Panadol, not an antibiotic. Yep. So trying best to introduce a business PMO to many organisations. So it is just a case of slap a PMO on and instantly pain goes away. Everything is fine. But actually, that's a nice analogy, Tariq, around antibiotics taking a longer period of time to actually do anything. You have to take the whole course before you start to see any benefit. Whereas if you just take paracetamol, you expect your headache to go within half an hour. And I think that's PMOs take a while to come to maturity. Would you say that was true?
Well, I think the only thing less understood than the word program is the initials PMO. So first of all, I
wonder why that is, though. They've been around a long time.
Yeah, but they're both misdefined. But that's another conversation for another day, perhaps. If we take the concept of some form of C-suite support, then PMO, as it with M for management, is about conformance to baselines, and it's about reporting. And the folk below the PMO see it as a drain on their morale, because what it's doing is it's imposing consistency of process in order to get good aggregation of data for decision makers.
Yes.
And the other dimension that we need is the PSO, where whatever the P stands for, portfolio, program, or project. The S is support. And now it's the sort of project manager's confidant. And I think too many organizations just talk about PMO. They don't really think about the M as meaning police force, as opposed to help assistant. So now lots of different communities are being expected to contribute and draw service from that group that's the PMO, and it's got too many different hats to wear simultaneously, too many different sources where it's supposed to promise trust and can't really. So I like the analogy, antibiotic versus painkiller, but I think if we actually identify what project program and portfolio support management offices should be doing, we see there's about 3 or 4 different beasts there, and they all have a different role description. And then we can constitute them, give them a charter that actually defines them with a role that adds value, and then they don't have a short-term existence.
Yes. I think I'm feeling that PMO and PSO and all things to do with MO or whatever project offices might become another whole theme week topic, because Marcel's left another comment about that. Tariq's left another comment about the work that he's on. So I think this is a really interesting conversation, but I did want to ask you about
of the PMO conference in London. Was it last week or the week before?
It's such a topical thing. I mean, the PMO conference in London is it's a great event. And
yes, you did go, did you?
I wasn't there, no. But let's park PMO for a moment, because I know that we're about halfway through our time, and I just wanted to ask you something else as well, which is, how do you build accountability? Because one of the things that I think, you don't have to be an accidental project manager to struggle with this, but you get given a team, or you get asked to find people, and then they say they're going to do a job or a task, and actually you check back in later and they've made 0 effort to get started. So how can you encourage your team to take responsibility for things, and just when you're not in a position of authority, get them to take a little bit of responsibility and accountability for the work that they're doing?
Yeah, it's a tough question, isn't it, to answer. How do you get people to do what they've said they will do? And that's the real challenge, because almost everybody, when you ask them, will you do this for me? Can you do it by this time? Gives a yes with...
Yeah, of course I can.
Yeah, but they give it with good intent. But then we get bombarded by too many pressures, and so it's the most... it's the most recent request for many people that's the one that's being worked on. So actually, one of my techniques as project manager is just to remind people frequently. Another technique is to say, for example, can you get this done for me by, end of week, end of month, or can you get this done for me? When can you deliver that? And let's say the response is I can deliver that for you by a week Friday. Then I'm going to say, okay, and let's have a couple of checkpoints. So I'm going to divide that time into 3. And then I'm going to go back just before the first of those divided into 3 and say, so are we ready for our checkpoint tomorrow, this afternoon, or whatever? Because that makes me the last person, the last puff of wind to have blown past them and set their direction. And then I'm going to go back the next 2 or 3 times. And by the time I've done that for about 3 times in a row, people get used to the idea that I'm going to follow up.
How do you stop following up being nagging? Or is that just a woman issue? If there is a thought that if I asked somebody too many times, it would be nagging, or maybe that's, I don't know. So, how can you phrase? Is it about how you phrase your request?
I think it is about how you phrase the request, but crucially, it's about recognizing when people are reliable and then backing off. So, and it's also about recognizing when people are unreliable and upping the level of call it support. I mean, the other dimension here is what questions you ask. So I'm always careful when I'm going to go and nag, because that's basically what it is. I'm always careful when I'm going to go and nag. The first question that I'll ask is about something from previous conversations about the person, and maybe they were going off for a picnic at the weekend or something. So how did that go? The second question I'll ask is about what do they need me to do in order that they can succeed. And it's only the third question, which is then about what do we still need to do in order to deliver successfully. So I think what you ask in terms of questions is important, how you approach things. So if people are letting me down, I let them know that this is a process of tracking back to baseline, because that's part of the project management role, and it's about keeping people from not letting you down. And if people are performing well, it's about saying thanks for that. That's great. Shout if you need my help. Otherwise, I'll expect delivery. I mean, that's the place where I want to get.
Fair enough.
So I think those are the dimensions.
Okay, thank you. Simon Sewell's made a point that actually as project management becomes a more compulsory subject in MBAs, the people who are coming through the pipeline, we should expect greater project management maturity levels, or at least awareness in the C-suite execs in years to come. So I think that harks back to what we were talking about earlier, but that's a good point.
Yeah, there's another one adding to that, which is that the regulators of most regulated industries are now getting much tougher about organisations' ability to cope with change. So I'm seeing regulatory pressure in organisations for people to be PMP certified, for example. So that was a change in the right direction.
There was a question in the group as well from Dinesh that was around he said, what does managing an IT budget mean to you? And I thought that was quite an insightful question, actually, because there's lots of different points of managing a budget. So I thought I would ask you the question, and then if there's time, I'll tell you what I think it means to me.
Okay. Well, in which case, how much time do we need?
We've got 6 minutes.
Okay. So I won't fill all 6. The first thing I'd say is that it's an interesting question to say managing an IT budget, because
for a project, not for a whole department.
Why put IT in the title at all? So I wonder whether he means managing the budget for a project that's an IT project, or does he mean managing a project that's using IT resources? And in both those cases, I would guess that for many organisations, IT resource is seen as a number of staff hours rather than a pounds or dollars cost. The key bit of managing the budget is about how many hours of resource have I got, how many days of resource have I got, and then what I want to know is how many days or hours worth of deliverable have I got to produce. And then managing a budget is asking the question, how much has been delivered versus how many hours are left. And it's always that equation, what's being delivered versus what's left. If the IT budget relates to money for licenses and sign-ups for SaaS arrangements and the like, then know the finance folk, have a friend in finance is the way I manage the budget when it's actually money.
Yes.
Keep them on side.
Okay. I interpreted it much more around the tasks that you have to do to manage. So I've got a budget tracker spreadsheet where I can list all the different elements of cost, and then I can track what we're expecting, the actual invoice number, purchase order number, all that kind of stuff, because for me it's all around tracking the money. What came in, what went out, did it match our forecast? If it didn't, can I take money from this pot and spend it up there? Is something coming in under budget, which gives me a bit of slack somewhere else? How am I doing with contingency?
Well, if it hadn't had the word IT in the question, that's how I would have interpreted it too. It was the IT budget. And I find
fair enough.
Typically is person hours rather than money.
Yes. Okay. That's been fantastic. I know it feels like that 20 minutes has gone so quickly. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and join us today. And thank you for being with us the whole week in the Facebook group. So I know people really appreciate having other voices apart from just me. So it's we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Host as well. Well, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts.
Well, have a great afternoon, and thanks everybody for joining live, and I will see you next week at the same time. So for our next instalment of Project Management Cafe office hours. So I'll see you then. Thanks very much. Bye.